Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Roundup. So, Alyx is done. California is trying to blast Riot for $400 million. The OWL and the CDL situation continues to be a big embarrassment for Activision-Blizzard, plus more, with Cyberpunk rumors, Tencents spreading influence, and Xbox. Now, we put out 6 videos a week. Your support is much appreciated, so if you want to like, really helps us out, and if you're new, subbing and ringing that bell is the thing to do. And with that covered, let's get into the news. So, Riot Games. As we reported last month, Riot was embroiled in a class action lawsuit based on gender discrimination. Now, at the time, the dispute appeared to have been concluded, with the 1,000 women who brought the lawsuit agreeing to settle out of court to the tune of $10 million. Now, as we said a month ago, $10 million might seem like a lot to you and me. For Riot, though, that's nearly, that's a drop in the bucket, right? They're one of the largest developers on the planet, one of the largest games on the planet with LoL, and it seems like we were not alone in thinking that, because California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing has actually intervened here. They've intervened in the suit, arguing that the claimants may be entitled to more than $400 million, which is quite a lot more than 10. Now, according to the LA Times, the vast gulf between these two figures is to account for significant gender pay gap related back pay at Riot, and additionally, they argue that Riot have not done enough to combat a toxic workplace culture in the wake of the lawsuit. Now, a Riot spokesperson, Joe Hickson, has slammed the California department for disputing the settlement that was agreed. He said they were using a legal filing that is filled with inaccuracies and false allegations, and that's pretty much what the sides have said at this stage. So the first thing here that's extremely obvious is Riot just want this to go away. Now, I think that original settlement of 10 million, just about everyone thought that was pretty darn lowballed in terms of what it was. Now, there were a lot of people saying that this is kind of like, a sort of a woke payment to the women or whatever, that kind of thing going on. From what I understand, that's really not what's going on here. And this is where we, enter Richard Lewis. Now, Richard Lewis, you will have known him for being the guy who stood up at the esports awards. He slammed Polygon, he slammed Kotaku, that guy, right? He's a really, really solid guy when it comes to things like this. Now, he has been saying since 2016 that there is an extreme situation at Riot, and even now, in the wake of that $10 million sort of slap with the settlement, I mean, he basically said that once NDAs expire, things are going to get extremely serious. From everything that we understand, there were really insane things going on at Riot way back in the day. Now, to what degree that stuff's actually continued into the future, it's kind of hard to say. We just don't really know. We don't see inside the company. I will say that I do have one friend in, let's just say, in a community that probably wouldn't have been that welcome in the initial Riot, who is sort of interested in working at that company now, and I think probably would know enough to know what's going on there. So if they're interested in working at Riot, then perhaps it is the case that, maybe they have actually made some changes. Overall here, I think the 10 million was definitely, a tiny amount of money for Riot. As for the 400 million, I just don't know the details of this. Riot have said that it's based on false allegations and inaccuracies. I suppose the legal system might have to just hash that one out, and maybe in the discovery phase, if this was to keep on going, we would find out a little bit more. But I think for me, the key thing here is we've got to approach this with neutrality. We've got to take all the facts, find out as much as we can, and then start to make judgments. I think if we come in here with preconceived notions of, this narrative is what is happening here, no matter what direction that goes in, ultimately that does not really help truth and justice and whatever. So I think that really is the key with this story, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Okay, so next, remember this story, right? This is when we covered the Overwatch League staff jumping ship, and if you've not watched it, you really should. It was, I think it was quite a good one. So, Faceit have announced a new CSGO league, and guess who's casting it? Monte Cristo and Semler. Now, also, Chris Puckett, who moved to New York, is still freelancing with the OWL from there, and then so will actually still remain hosting. There is more to the story, though, because over in the Call of Duty League, a bunch of their casters have just had their contracts just not be renewed before the league season kicks off. Now, I've also heard some interesting things, let's just say, and I'll just say this. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, okay? From what I understand, Blizzard's wage offers were terrible, and they pretty much tried to decrease wages with each successive season of the Overwatch League. I can't say numbers that would reveal people, but, let's just say I think you would be surprised with how little the on-screen talent was being offered. And I think it's no surprise now that, they're staffing the league with casters who very much do fall within Blizzard's gravitational pull. So, they've burned through casters, the MLG has seemingly disappeared, and tomorrow we've got a big video on their finances, how they've essentially, I mean, my personal opinion, swindled Twitch and sort of pumped their numbers. It's based off a report from Richard Lewis, and I think it'll be a really interesting topic to dive into, so sub for that if you're interested tomorrow. And next up, Half-Life Alyx is just a few weeks away, and we've learned a little bit more through Valve's AMA. Now, first, they say they're actually confident in their March release window, and you probably heard that before, but yes, finally something is not being hit by the 2020 wave of delays. So, it's basically at the stage of being, like, in final tweaks. They say that Valve time, you know, it's a thing, but they announced the game after the Valve time happened, so it's pretty much a sure bet. Then next, Alyx's team is actually the largest one Valve have ever had, with a team of 80 working in the game, and the AMA has also confirmed that there was no company-wide embargo on talking about Half-Life over the years, and it's basically just that there wasn't that much to talk about until Alyx. I've got to wonder how much is that, like, of that is true, given the Episode 3 sort of writing leaks that happened, I think, a year or two ago, so a little bit iffy there, but there is some other good news where Half-Life, Half-Life 2, and all the expansions are actually free until it comes out, and I've got to heavily say, you've got to play Half-Life 1 and 2 if you've not. They are like landmark moments in gaming history. 2, I think, did a lot, but for me, Half-Life 1 is the real gem. Half-Life 1 especially proved a lot in first-person experiential storytelling. It's an incredible game, and I think it unquestionably shifted the direction of the gaming industry. So if you've not played it, I think it is a wonderful game to play, be it the original version, the sourced-up version, or Black Mesa. You've just got to play it. It is incredible. And then next up, we all have a good Tencent story, and it's been revealed that Tencent have launched a bid to acquire all shares in Funcom, valuing the Norwegian developer at $148 million. Now, Tencent, they're already the largest shareholder in Funcom, having acquired 29% of its stock in September of last year. Now, this potential deal has actually been welcomed by Funcom's management team with, you know, the usual PR speak coming from both sides. You know, Tencent be like, oh, they're a great developer, and, you know, Funcom being, oh, it's great, operational insights, gaming industry, blah, blah, blah. The usual stuff whenever an acquisition offer is you know, tabled. Now, of course, Funcom's remaining stockholders could technically reject Tencent's approach here, but Funcom's upper management has actually issued a statement saying that they do recommend the acceptance of the deal, and also, I think very importantly, Tencent is pricing them very attractively, offering 27% more per share than their trading value on the day that this story emerged. Now, this deal is not final yet, and the process should begin in February, but it does look like, from Funcom's perspective, this will be a good move for them. After all, it was not all that long ago that they basically, like, Conan Exiles saved them from the financial abyss. They kind of made a bet on that, and it really paid off for them, but it was a ropey time. Now, this move also comes the same week that Tencent have announced that they're actually going to be moving away from game acquisition. Instead, they're going to be focusing a bit more on digital distribution, and this is following the success of their WeChat platform. I don't think it's much in the UK, but I think in Canada and America, it's actually growing. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. Now, as I said in the last Tencent story, you know, this is an example of a company picking up assets just across the industry and across the world. I mean, sure, there's no video game index fund that you can just invest in to capitalize on the broad growth of the sector, but that doesn't matter when your portfolio, like Tencent's, pretty much just has a bit of everything across the world. And with Chinese regulation always being possible on gaming, you know, it's no doubt important for Tencent that they grow their international influence so that they're kind of safeguarded against that and have a diversified business. And then also, to be real, I imagine the CCP will be more than happy to have a large Chinese tech conglomerate who also runs a bunch of stuff for them, you know, have a lot of influence across the world. It does make me think of other things like, say, the Belt and Road Initiative and just a lot of their, I suppose, geoeconomic policy in trying to just get a bit more control around the world. Anyway, with that, let's talk about Cyberpunk. So we might actually have an answer for the Cyberpunk delay via Boris, who's got a surname that I do not want to butcher because it'd be a bit disrespectful, so I'm not going to do that. But Boris, on a recent podcast, he's a director, and he seems to be a little bit close to Cyberpunk somehow, and he said that it's because of launch performance on the Xbox One launch model, and that's why the delay is, and apparently it's extremely unsatisfactory, and it just is going to take time to get it to be better. Now, this is a bit of a weird one because Cyberpunk 2077 was supposedly built ground up for current-gen consoles, with CD Projekt Red saying that the game is intended to be the crowning jewel of the generation, and And, they previously stated outright that development would not be held back by, console hardware limitations. So it's a bit of an interesting situation there. And while Boris certainly does appear to be quite confident to actually discuss this, it's kind of difficult to determine, why he would know it and what's going on. And then also, interestingly, the God of War developer, Cory Balrog, weighed in via Twitter, and he said, "Every game runs badly until you optimize in the final push before gold." So yes, this delay might just be that CD Projekt Red need a bit more time. Now, on that topic, right, and on optimization, here's the thing. You only really know what to optimize when much of your game is final, because before that, everything is shifting and changing, especially if you're going to be doing optimizations that are specifically for, the specs of a certain piece of hardware, which, would be the case with the launch Xbox console. So yeah, that seems to be what's going on there. Right now, it's just hard to say. I would imagine that realistically, it's a bunch of everything. They probably have some bugs that, they don't want to ship. They probably want to polish it up a bit more, and they probably want to get the performance going, and unfortunately, they're probably going to crunch a few people to actually get it over the line, which is, obviously a bit of a sad situation. Okay, next up, and finally, following on from our story a few weeks back, leaked images of the Xbox Series X have appeared online. So, the back of the console actually does match up with a graphic posted by Therot.com at the time of AMD's mistake at CES, where they showed a fan render instead of the real one. Whoops. Now, this image shows the standard ports and vents, as well as a diagnostic slot that's not expected to be there in retail units. There's also a slot at the top of the console, which kind of indicates a removable panel. It's kind of unclear whether this is just something for pre-production units, though I'd kind of imagine so. Now, one odd thing is that the serial number is there. Now, those serial numbers, they will be tracked. So whoever is responsible for this, Microsoft is probably going to find out about it. Now, there is one final thing that I will say on this. That diagnostic slot at the top does make me think of one thing, okay? If it's called Xbox Series X, that sort of shows you, a broad, right? A sort of a broad scope for it. What if they were to sell hardware upgrade units? I mean, we've been thinking, going to CES, right? In the PC gaming world, this sort of idea of just, the easily, almost Lego computers where you just slot in a new module and that's your upgrade. A part of me would wonder if you just have your Series X and then, if you could kind of get an upgrade unit, pop it in, it will give you a better CPU and graphics, something like that. Now, to be clear, I do not believe that to be the case at all. I think that is just a diagnostic thing for, hardware fixes in pre-production units, but something like that would undoubtedly be an interesting thing. And I mean, in some ways, it would be more efficient than what they're doing right now, which is just to release a more, an expensive, upgraded version that is just a new console, so you can sort of throw away or sell your old one. Anyway, something like that I think would be cool, but that's totally personal opinion. But anyway, that's it for me, so let me know what you think about the stories. Hit that sub button. Tomorrow, we're going into the OWL, we're going into numbers. Twitch is $90 million that I doubt they're going to be that happy with, and how Overwatch League teams don't seem to have been recouping the money that maybe they thought they would based on Blizzard's initial sales of those franchise spots, which, I will remind you, were extremely expensive. So there's that. If you want a fun video, check out yesterday's. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.